Welcome to this week's episode of Listen to Your Coaches. I'm your coach, Mike Wilkins, here with Coach Will Morrill. This week, we're going to talk about injuries and how I broke Will's neck. Well, why don't you start us down the path of maybe let's start with telling people what's going on with you.
Yeah, so I am just under 2 weeks out from neck surgery. Nothing like real specific, but just like, a couple decades of combat sports, catch up. So I had a cervical fusion, anterior cervical fusion. So they cut in like right here. I got kind of like a little gnarly scar down here.
Dude, that's sick.
And they pull out the disc and then they put some cadaver fibula in there.
Yeah.
And that.
Do you
will
know the
eventually-
person whose fibula it was?
I do not. I do not.
Can you find out?
I don't think so.
Are you allowed to find out, or is it
That's
like
what I'm saying.
not
I
allowed?
think that's like a
Okay.
HIPAA violation or something like that. I can see though, but
Is it? It's someone who died. I'm assuming.
I mean, they didn't like go up to some dude and just be like, "Hey, we're
Can
gonna
we
take your
borrow
fibula."
Can we find? Because I would be a donor if you needed it. Yeah.
Yo, let me get that fibula. But so yeah, then eventually my bone will like graft over that, and I'll just have like one big giant vertebrae instead of two individual ones. I should probably start with like why I needed this.
Yeah. Why did you need it?
So
Just weak neck.
yeah, dude, super weak neck. No, I had a really bad herniated disc. So for if you guys aren't like familiar, you've got your vertebrae here, like the spine bones, and in between them you've got those these discs, these like jelly-like discs. And when you like squish this stuff around too much, some of the discs can like pop out to the side.
Yuck.
And that was squishing into my nerves. And so like probably, I don't know, 2 months before the surgery, I was in the weight room and we had just finished a cycle of like incline dumbbell bench and we were going to flat dumbbell bench. So I grabbed the same weights that I finished with the week before because it should get easier going to flat. And I'm like, this will be a good starting weight. I couldn't even move it on my left side. I was like, what is going on? My right side felt good, so I went down a little bit, still couldn't go. I was like, yo, what's going on here? And then like I finally, like super lightweight, I was like forcing it up and like shaking all crazy. And I was like, that's really bizarre. And I'd already had in my like lifting notes that I had a stinger in my neck, and I was like, oh, that must be it.
Yeah.
So then like a week or two of that went by, sort of get better on its own. It didn't. So then I went and got some muscle relaxers at like Med Express.
Yeah.
And that just like made me kind of stupid. Didn't really help out that much. It like still hurt pretty bad. And that's the other thing, is it was starting to hurt real bad through like my neck, all through like the back of my shoulder blade, tricep, and then my fingers would go numb.
How are your fingers feeling now?
Great. Like within a
Can
few
you do
days
this?
after surgery, yeah. Like a few days
You
after
play the air
surgery,
guitar?
absolutely. Like this fixed very, very quickly, but leading up to the surgery, it was getting worse and worse and worse. And then like I noticed, from like trying to like lift and stuff, eventually I couldn't do push up, and my pec and my tricep just like were jelly. Like I could feel like they weren't innervated, and like how you can like flex your pec and feel it. Like I couldn't do that on my
doing
left
it right now.
side. Exactly. And like same with my left tricep, and like if you felt it, it was just like jelly. And then like the last month before surgery, dude, they just like, you probably can't tell on camera, but like they just like withered away. Like my left tricep and pec are just like probably 50% of the size they were before. It's like real gross.
Oh, that sucks, dude.
so-
That's so devastating.
Yeah. So,
But this will fix you back 100%.
pretty much, yeah, it's gonna take a while to rehab it. So
Like, when will you be back and like no restrictions? You think?
like rolling, sparring, whatever. I
Yeah,
felt
no
like doing,
restrictions.
probably a year.
A year,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Hey, that's how the cookie crumbles. It's very sad
Dude, the way I look at it though is like it's a small cost to pay for like
for you to get that back.
well, not even to get it back, for just like the life I've lived. You know what I mean? Like I've been doing combat sports for legit 2 decades, like now.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't trade that for the world. You know what I mean? Like this is a small price to pay.
What a great outlook on that. Maybe that's an outlook that we should preach through this episode.
I think we will. I think we will.
All right. So what we're going to be talking about, bouncing off of Will's injury, is, injuries in combat sports, from major to minor, how to deal with them mentally, physically, how to train through them, how to continue to improve while injured, things like that, right?
Absolutely.
It was going to be very will heavy because I don't have much to add to this at all.
That's not true. So we'll get into it.
All right.
So well, hold on. Bouncing off of this, just like some things that people might be able to like do to not end up in my situation. I would say that, like, again, there was no one thing that I was like, oh, that's what screwed up my neck. But I do remember like having some. I've had neck issues. Like, I don't want to say neck issues, but like, I get a stinger here and there, just like, oh, rest it up and be good. And I remember one time, probably, I don't know, maybe 6 months before surgery, I was wrestling up from bottom on Big Bob, right?
Yeah.
And like, not in like oh, this is the right decision and I'm technical, but like in a, oh, I'm gonna be tough type of way, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I remember like wrestling up, and not that he did anything wrong, he's like a great training partner, but I just like remember feeling my neck just like, that little,
Uh-huh.
yeah. And I was like, I should probably chill for like a couple weeks. So I chilled for a few weeks. Then I tried to do the same thing on Logan, right?
Yeah.
Big mistakes. Same thing, but worse. And then like in the few weeks after that, I could feel that like stinger, not just in my neck, but going down into my shoulder blade. And that just like kind of persisted on and off for like a couple months before like I had that issue when I was benching, and I just like, it just turned off.
Yeah.
So I would say, and also like, I did an awful lot of stuff like that in my early 20s. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
you're in a guillotine, and it maybe isn't like super on, and you're just like, oh, I'm not gonna tap, but also you
Yeah.
can feel your neck just getting like crushed. Trying to like, in those two instances, trying to wrestle on like significantly bigger and better, partners. It's like, why would that's not the right choice. You know what I mean? There's a video somewhere, it might be on Instagram, of me wrestling with Lonnie. We're on the feet, I'm moving around, and you hear Warren like coaching me, and he's like, yeah, look for like trips or something a little safer. And I blast a double and just get stuffed. So like, I would say that some amount of like having death matches on the mat and like going hard is like, there's some value in that, but just doing an awful lot of that, which is like
Yeah, more
large,
than needed.
exactly, like,
There's it does bring a value.
it does.
But like, like,
at what cost?
yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
it's something you need to.
And it's a balancing act.
And I think for me, coming from boxing, getting into jiu-jitsu, I was like, oh, this is so much safer. I can just kind of be reckless. And you can't,
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing that's really important. I think another thing that's really important that I've learned with this particular injury is like being in shape year round is so beneficial. Like, I think that I probably would have had this issue worse or earlier if I didn't have a super strong neck. You know what I mean? And also the recovery has been so much easier. Like, people are talking about like, oh, you've got to do like X, Y, and Z, like coming out of surgery, and like just things like picking something off the floor. It's not that difficult for me because I don't need to bend my neck to do that. I can
Right,
just
yeah.
like bend my knees and like stand up, and just like recovery is so much easier if your body's strong and in shape. So I'm just like so thankful that even though I haven't really worked out for like, I don't know, we'll call it 3-4 months, just because like this has really shut things down. Um, 2 decades of lifting all the time before that really paid off. So hopefully someone could take a little something from that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, cool.
So do you have any big injuries of your own that you had to battle?
I would say like my worst injuries all were knee injuries. I did have a herniated disc last summer,
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
2 summers ago.
Was that from when you were in Texas?
No, that's from a long time ago. That ended up being, I think that was just muscular. I had a herniated disc, and I, again, have no idea where it came from, but I often got stingers in like the back of my shoulder, right? And like those of you watching who may have had these before, like when you're driving, but you have to put your arm behind you, right? Like that's the only time you feel comfort is when your arm's behind you, you know?
That was the whole time that we had all those travel
Yeah.
dates. I was driving like this the whole time.
Yeah. So, yeah. I thought it was one of those, which you thought yours
Yeah.
was as well. And it just like didn't get better the way that it always has in the past. And I've probably had at least 15 of those. Like,
Right.
can't turn your head, like your shoulders are lopsided. And again, it just didn't get better. And then I went to the doctor about it, and I was like, yeah, like it's just not getting better. And they're like, dude, it's not your shoulder, it's your neck. And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, yeah, it's probably disc. So like, got MRI or whatever, and it was disc. And I just needed the rest, and I rested for I don't know, seven weeks or whatever, and I was back 100%.
Yeah, yeah.
I remembered same story as you. I was doing incline bench, right? When you said you went from incline to flat, but we were doing incline bench on the cycle that I was on, right? And I remember I was like able to push. I was able to push whatever weight I was doing up, but I couldn't control it on the way down.
Oh yeah,
Right, and it was
just
on my right side, so like my left would be like up, down, like and it's like piston like motion, right? And my right would just be like up and like bop, drop,
yeah.
up and like drop, and I would do push-ups, and I could push up, but on the way down, and like instead of coming down,
start leaning into the
it'd just be like boom, I just like fall down on the right side and stuff, and then it went away, fixed itself, and then I was back and had some really good competition performances actually immediately after.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, discs. I mean, like when people talk about having a herniated disc, it's one of those things that's like, it's kind of like, and I'm sure we'll touch on concussions to some degree, but like technically, like that's kind of a concussion right there. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
very, very mild. And the same thing with like herniated discs. Like most people, especially most people listening to this, probably have a herniated disc right now. They don't even know about.
Yeah.
It's just like degrees. And I remember when they showed me the MRI of mine, I was like, oh shit, that's
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah, that's what you got surgery for.
Yeah. So like, yeah, herniated disc. It's nothing to fool around with.
No.
So hold on,
that was
okay.
pretty bad. But I would say my worst injuries were all knee injuries.
That's what I want to get into. So, would you say your worst one was your meniscus?
No.
No.
It was the one that required surgery to fix. The other ones didn't require surgery. The MCLs and LCLs. Primarily, the worst knee injuries I've had were just different grades of MCL sprains.
Okay.
Right? Or yeah, MCL sprains and tears and things of that nature. But MCLs they heal. They heal
Right.
themselves, right? But like like just like the knee going like in from the outside, the toes going like if I'm looking at like this big being the big toe, the toe going like that,
Yep.
like causing like a pop on the MCL. So if you're jiu-jitsu people, like inside heel hook, just pop, like those types of pops. Those I would say were the worst that I've had because they've had me out for longer periods of time.
And do you know how those injuries occurred? Or was it
Yeah,
just
so
an
the first
overuse?
time I had an MCL, I was wrestling, and a group of heavyweights next to us ran into the side of my knee, like double legged, and like like I'm like wrestling here, and they boom into the side of my knee and popped my MCL. That took me out of a fight.
Oh, that's brutal. And you know what's crazy is like we hear that same story all the way up to like the UFC. You know
Oh
what I mean?
yeah,
I believe it was Dominic Cruz who had exactly that happen. Was out for like a year.
yeah, dude. You hear about it all the time, and like like we complain about it in practices. We're like one of the things is like know your area, know your area. Talk about it all the time, like knowing your area, right? Like if you're in a fight, like especially in fight practice, if you're in a fight, you got to know your area. Number one, you got to know where you are in the cage,
Yep.
right? Like ring awareness. So how do you get to practice that if you're sparring in a large open room? Well, the people around you, that's your area. You know what I mean? That way you're keeping them safe, they're keeping you safe, and like that's like the application of like realness to it. It's like okay, like being able to know that there's someone like 2 feet behind my left shoulder, and like stuff like that. But sometimes those things happen, and I hate it. So those would be the worst. The MCLs I had happen from an inside heel hook, happen from just like a wet mat, and I go to drive to shoot,
Yep.
like shooting in on a takedown, and it like basically the same motion as an inside heel hook, like my leg on the mat. I've had LCLs from defending takedowns, like being in a position that I thought I had more mobility and flexibility in, not giving up a pop in my knee, and things like that. Yeah, So those have always kept me out the longest, and I've noticed that they've kept me out longer. I don't know if it's due to each time it being longer or due to each time it happens. I am now older, so that being longer. So you don't really know. My last visit to my ortho for my knee was for an MCL, and I went in and I told him like what I thought happened, what I thought it was. I was like, I think it's this MCL because this, and that. I just wanted to check, like on like make sure like you thought like that was just it or whatever. And he was like, he said that I'm at the point where I know, like I I know the amount of things. Like I was right, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
But he was like, you know the perfect amount that it's terrible for you. You know what I mean? Like he was like, if you would have known less, then you wouldn't have been as concerned. If you would have known more, you would know not to be as concerned. But you know just the amount to know what happened to you, but also what possibly additionally could be in there to where
Right.
you're in that sweet spot of fear.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, he's like, you're fine. Just go rest.
Yeah.
Right? Rest it, you're fine. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you just knew a little less,
Yeah. Yeah.
you wouldn't have come in. Right? You'd have been like, oh, my knee hurts. Oh, and stayed home. And if you would have known more, like would have been formally educated, then you wouldn't have come in.
Yeah. Exactly.
But you know more than like most people, which makes you like a little. It's like when you Google your symptoms and it's like
Yeah.
you're dying, right? Like that's where I am on my knowledge of the construction of the knee. Like I know enough that I'm afraid at all
It's
times.
like, I don't want to go on a tangent because I do want to ask you about this knee, but do you remember that time that we were teaching in practice and you know, you're totally fine and you went to demo a move and you stood up and like no pain or anything, but we're just like talking while everyone's starting to get, you know, to drilling, and you looked at your finger and you had that big bump. It was like an inch bump on your finger, and you're like, "Bro, what is this?" And you started Googling symptoms. Is that the same one?
It's still there. Dude.
Really?
It's still there. Yeah, it won't go away. Look.
Oh, that's crazy.
It'll go away and come back.
But I remember you started Googling symptoms and you were like, oh no, I probably got cancer or something.
Yeah,
like,
dude, I had finger cancer. That's what I thought.
Google
It's
is
still
the
there.
worst.
It's
I can't
still
believe
there.
you still have that. That's nuts.
It will go away. Like I'll hit my finger hard, and it will just like go away,
That's
and then it will
weird.
just, it will just come back. Yeah, dude,
Dude,
it's still there.
That's how my ears are. Like I'll like wrestle real hard and they'll blow up and I'm like, oh, this is it. I got cauliflower ear now. And then the next day, they just
Yeah.
like shrink back down.
Yeah, I mean, this is here like 99.9% of the time. And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
Every
but
once in a while, I'm like,
occasionally-
I'm like, oh, it's gone.
That's crazy. But okay, getting back to your knee though. So other than just like being aware of your you know surroundings and like not running, and I think to add on to that, not just being aware but also like taking action not to, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if you're gonna blast a double on someone and you see a group right behind that guy, don't take the double.
So
It's not
let's-
that important.
Yeah, you will. Yeah, I mean, yes.
But other than that, is there anything else that you can take away from those knee injuries that's
Yes,
like applicable to other
limitations
people?
of my body. You
Mm.
know what I mean? Like, so like,
Let me rephrase that. How so that's helpful for you. How can like the average practitioner take something away from that? Like what helped you get that awareness?
what helped me get that awareness?
Yeah.
Getting injured.
Is there anything that like you could impart on someone else so that like that didn't happen to them?
Oh, no. No, you just kind of got to go through it. I mean, just maybe knowing in your head that like, hey, there's a limit here. Playing some risk reward similar to you with your neck, right? Like with my knees, sometimes I'm like, like even though it's practice, you're like, man, I don't want to lose this
Yeah.
position or lose this round.
Right.
Like sometimes that competitor comes out, that competitiveness comes out, and you're like, you're like, oh, I might be willing to risk an injury right now.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's just like, you know, trying to be smarter in areas like that, like know when to like tap to a heel hook, know when to bail on a takedown defense, because a lot of
Right.
times through some like maybe defensive postures and positions for takedowns, your knee can be at risk. You hear it, the wrestlers will immediately know like rubber knee position and like stuff like that. We have positions literally named after like deformity of the knee,
Right, yeah.
and the which like a defensive move is to like put your knee in a position where your MCL is going to blow out.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's like let's twist your leg the wrong way. You know?
Right.
It's like that's like what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
So you know, just being aware of when to bail. I actually heard Ben Askren talk about it, like specifically with the shin wizard position. About like, you know, like because like when you're defeating a shin wizard, you're like almost doing like a similar motion to their leg as an inside heel hook, to prevent them from being able to, you know, square off, turn and face, and like you're pulling the toes up to elevate and stuff like that. Like knowing when to just be like, yo, all right, you got the takedown.
Right. Yeah.
Like, you know, and stuff like that. So yeah, just being aware of your body's limitations.
I think something else that kind of along those lines, I'm just thinking about wrestling, something that like gets preached all the time at Stout, and like Warren's really big on this, is when you're in like a like body lock position, not dropping and throwing your hips into someone's knee.
Yeah, that's so like I struggle to even operate in that arena. Like I struggle to bring myself down to that level.
What do you mean? Like,
To think like that would like I know I say it when I'm teaching a class in which there's any feet to floor, I say it and I kind of like do like a little show of it, but like I just can't believe that happens. Like
it's like not even the most.
it's so like poor technique.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not even like
It's
that
so
effective.
poor technique that it's like so far out of my like
Right.
realm, right? My world, right?
Right.
If I'm training with the people that I train with, it's not even like a thought,
Right.
right? Because like, why would you
Yeah.
do something so dumb? Like, there's nothing good's gonna happen for you either.
Yeah, it's either gonna blow
You're
that
either
dude's
blowing my knee out or you lose too.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is putting yourself in a bad position.
Yeah,
You
you're
know
pulling
what I
guard
mean?
in like the worst way possible.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, yeah, it's just a horrible technique, and the people that I, train with, they don't have technique at that low level, but we do teach classes, of in introductory levels and fundamental levels in which those people do not have quite the level of experience. So, you give them the heads up on it and you kind of explain like, hey, like, first things first, like most important is everybody's safety today, right? Like think about it. Like everybody think about in here, hey, do you want to be able to walk out of here, right? Like is anything we're doing in here, like are your goals of what's happening in this practice worth
Right.
you being out for 6 months, a year,
Right.
like whatever. What about you putting someone else out for 6
Right,
months,
exactly.
a year? Is it worth that? Like no, it's not. So you don't want to perform an action that could possibly do that, not to mention an action that, had you succeeded in not injuring them while doing it, would result in you failing on your goal anyhow,
Yeah.
right? Because you're going to end up in a position that you did not desire,
Right,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? Like if you're behind and you're doing that, what you think you're doing is you think you're taking someone down,
Right.
And you're going to end up on top. What you're doing there is you're pulling them on top of you.
Exactly.
So you either pop their knee or you pull them on top of you. Those are your two outcomes.
Right. Right. Yeah. Neither one's good.
Right. So you do have to explain that, and like you hope they get it through that, and I think most people do.
Now, so that I've had that happen to me, and I was out for like almost a year of jujitsu from that. Similar injury that I also had was from a leg lock. Do you have any, as a black belt, as this being your area of expertise, do you have any quick tips for people in terms of leg lock safety?
Yeah, I do. I have tremendous amount of. I think I have a great insight on safety for leg locks, and I feel like I'm probably a really good person to say this because this is something that. So a lot of guys who have higher level jujitsu, and like not to say that I have like incredibly high level jujitsu, but I am a black belt.
I'll say that you have very high level jujitsu.
Yeah, I mean I am a black belt. I'm a competitive black belt, or at least was a competitive black belt at the highest level competition that is offered.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I've had success at that level, Not the most success in the world, but like, I did have some good success at that level. And my
You've won
MMA,
some big tournaments,
I've won some tournaments that I'm very proud to have won. I've competed well in tournaments that I'm very proud to have been a participant in, and stuff like that.
And even outside of that, like when we were at the Ultimate Fighter, like
Oh, dude, that was
dominated
different. That wasn't me. That was somebody else, dude. That was somebody else. That was like an outer body experience. Yeah, at my Ultimate Fighter tryout,
that was you, dude.
dude, I was on something else, dude. Like, I don't know who that dude was, but that dude was gonna win a title. Like, holy crap.
Dude,
like,
we
I
should-
was on, I don't know what happened to me, but I could not do wrong.
It was the
like,
mental training we did, dude.
dude, everything I did just worked perfectly and like quick and like immediate and like, dude, it was just like touch gold, touch gold, touch gold. Like it was the best athletic, and it's a shame that it was in like a 2-minute grappling, like 2 minutes of grappling, but it was the single best athletic performance I have ever put on in my entire life.
We should either do an episode about maybe that whole weekend or maybe even just the mental training we did for that.
Yeah, we should, and we would just use the whole weekend as
Right.
Yeah, boom. You guys know what's
Another
coming
episode.
up. So I've maybe potentially an irrational fear of leg locks. Okay, as a black belt, in my first 15 matches, I was 11-4, and all 4 of those losses were leg lock. And in those 15 matches, at no point in time was I losing
Right.
the match. Like I was actually up
Even
on.
those 4
wasn't even
losses, you were-
tied.
right.
Yeah, we weren't even tied. I was up on points in every single match. Okay. And I lost to leg lock, and I think a lot of it was an irrational fear of what was actually happening,
Right.
and the irrational fear stemmed from not having a deep understanding of what's really going on technically. Okay,
Right.
so I come from primarily a focus on MMA, in which the majority of my win, I have a lot of finishes in my career.
Oh yeah.
I don't exactly know the number, but I think I have 16 finishes, and I think 14 are submissions
Yeah.
in MMA fights.
Right.
And that's quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm kind of like a submission guy in jiu-jitsu too, and uniquely, a lot of people who are submission guys in MMA, they have good guards, and we're top,
Yeah.
top,
Yeah.
top, right? So climbing my way through the positional hierarchies there. But when leg locks became the meta, so to speak. When leg locks became the meta, just checking.
Just checking.
When leg locks became the meta, I shunned them. All right, I thought they weren't my style because they weren't for MMA, which I have a differing opinion of that now. I think leg locks are going to be a wave. I don't think they're the next wave, but I think leg entanglements specifically are going to be.
They have their place.
They're going to be a new thing.
Right.
They're going to be used in a new way. Leg locks are going to be used in a way that I feel like people aren't going to think of. They think oh, I'm going to submit with them.
Right.
No, I think it's going to be a positional.
It's gonna be kind of like the way a Kimura is.
Right. Yeah, like a positional thing. But that's for me to prove with my fighters, and not for me to explain on a podcast.
Yeah.
But I kind of shunned them because my initial thought was, you're going to get knocked out going for them in an MMA fight, which we see happen, but there's an evolution and a growth to leg locks. And then I was kind of behind the curve on them, into which a lot of my competitors, when I switched from MMA to a pure jiu-jitsu focus for my competitiveness or my competitive career, a lot of my competitors were far ahead of me on leg locks due to me shunning them, and even my training partners were significantly far ahead of me. So then I again had the mindset of, okay, I can't catch up.
Yeah.
I can't catch up to you here. So I have to go a different route, and I'm just going to focus on stopping that, right? Which you cannot do with leg locks. You cannot just be like, okay, I'm going to defend leg locks. I'm a full believer right now, and my mind can be changed again with new evidence. As before, I thought I could do this.
Yeah.
And then and now my opinion has changed when presented with new evidence, and the evidence is self brought from my own learning and stuff. Leg locks are not something to just defend, right? There's 3 stages, in my opinion, of leg lock defense. There's prohibiting the entry, okay? Then there's stuffing the entry, all right? Prohibiting the entry is me not giving you an opportunity to even attempt an entry.
Gotcha.
So that could be me either A, putting my body in a position where entries are not available, think about smash passing, or controlling the tools that you need to enter, right? That'd be me controlling your legs, likely with my hands, and me controlling, because you need both. You need legs and hands for you to enter into these leg entanglement positions in which leg locks come from. So it would be me controlling likely your legs with my hands and your hands with my motion and distance. Okay? So that is step 1, completely preventing opportunity.
Right.
Step 2 is while you are entering into your leg entanglements, while you're doing the motion of entangling the legs, kind of stuffing them, right? Okay, I stop it. I defend those and take away that opportunity and bring us back to before you started, entangling. Step 3 is, okay, now I am entangled.
Right.
Okay, so how do I, 1, keep myself safe while entangled, and 2, clear myself from this entanglement? Well, in step 3, a huge portion of clearing yourself from that entanglement is offering counterattack, right? If I'm just only defending, then you are only on the offense.
Right. It's like in striking. If you're just shelled up moving your head,
Yes.
it's oh yeah, I'm not getting hit.
It's okay, I'm just going to not get hit.
Right.
It's okay, well, how much free are you to throw your strikes when this person is not going to punch back?
Yes.
Right? So it's the same thing. I'm not going to attack back. You are now more on the offense, and then you just get avalanched through. Okay? So I found that out the hard way. All right?
Dude, hold on. I didn't want to stop you in the middle of
Go
that.
ahead.
But this is cool because you and I have never talked about this before. But the way you just described those levels of defense is almost identical to how I describe levels of striking defense to our fighters. That's so cool.
I mean, it's combat is combat.
Yeah, dude. Good
You know
ideas
what
are
I
good
mean? Like,
ideas.
obviously, things are going to have, like, you
Yeah.
know, cross references. And good
Great-
ideas are good ideas.
Great concepts transcend combat sports. you
They
know?
do. They do, yeah. I mean, that's just all there is to it. Now, to be fair, you're a very deep thinker. One of the things about you is, like, I think from my time with you is that you are a creator. Okay? You create, like, concepts and things like that, and you figure out, like, okay, that makes sense. This makes sense. You spend a lot of time. I'm a borrower. Okay? So I will be like, oh, this person does this person does that person does this, and I borrow.
Dude, have you
right?
ever heard the quote, good artists borrow, great artists steal?
No,
Anyway, sorry.
no. But, like, yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't necessarily come up with everything on my own. You know, it's not to say that I have not come up with anything. I've come up with a few things,
really good
but
stuff.
like a lot of my stuff is definitely at least heavily inspired by other people, right? Like, and I'm like, okay, that's working, and then I do like for myself to figure out why.
Right.
Like, that's part of the fun for me.
Yeah.
You know, is like figuring out why. Why does it work? Oh, okay, I see. If my elbow's here, they can't move their hip this way. If my shoulder's here, they can't turn their face that way. Like, da da da.
Right.
Like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So, back to leg locks.
Right, yeah.
Right. If you don't have counter offense, like as we discussed with striking, like, you're just gonna get pop 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 shot. Okay. So then, like, the injury that is caused by the leg lock is so severe.
Yeah.
It's so severe. Like a strangle, it's like, all right, dude, like, tap out, I'm out, or I
Right.
pass out. Like,
Yeah.
like, let's say, like, I didn't react in time. I didn't
Right.
tap in time, because I have been, like, strangled into which I did not have time to tap, so I was passed out.
Yeah.
And then you are fine.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
are fine. But joint locks,
Nah.
you know, and now here goes the thing with upper body joint locks. I don't know. I just feel like I have more of a feel for my upper body.
They say that you have better proprioception in your, shoulders
Yeah.
and elbows than in your knees.
So I feel like I'm gonna understand and be able to tap in time. With my legs, I don't feel the same, right? With my knees, I'm like, can my knee go further? I
Right.
don't know, like which way. So I found that, at least I believe that in those 4 matches, not to say that I wouldn't have been submitted regardless,
Right.
but in all 4 of those matches, I tapped too early.
Yeah.
You know, I tapped, like, before I should have.
Right.
And in addition to that, like, but it didn't matter because I didn't know how I was going to get out anyhow.
Right.
Because I wasn't counterattacking yet. I was still on straight defense to the point where I was watching them do it to me. I was watching the leg. I'm like, oh, they're going to pass the leg over there. And, like, oh, they're going to expose my heel by bringing their elbow back. And, like, bang, 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 right? And I'm
Which
like,
by
watching it happen.
definition puts you a step behind.
Yes, exactly. And then I got submitted with an Aoki lock at ADCC West Coast Trials by at the time he was ranked the #1 brown belt in the world, which was sad because I was a black belt. But you know, those things,
Yeah,
that's actually fairly normal. And then he got his black belt shortly thereafter, and he is having a really good black belt like career right now. Sean Yadamarco, he's a Tom DeBlas guy, so we're like distantly teammates.
Right.
You know, we're under the Henzo umbrella. So he Aoki locked me, and I tapped, and like ADCC is a little more rougher, right? So like he didn't stop, he kept going, right? And I'm like tap 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 tap, and I'm like pissed, right? Because like I had been tapping for like, you know, like 2 seconds, which is like a hot minute.
I was like, I'll fight someone for that.
Which is like a hot minute. And like I like the ref, like, you know, stops it or whatever, and I'm like, dude, like, what the fuck, dude? Right? Like, and I'm like, I know we don't like know each other or whatever.
Yeah, but like
come
on, dude.
come on.
Be cool.
Come on. Like,
You see
know
this
what I
Henzo
mean?
lion?
Like, yeah, we're in the same logo, like, come on, type thing. And he looked at me just like weird, right? He gave me like a weird look. He was like, huh. And then like boom, boom, boom. And then like afterwards, it was like, yeah, you were tapping for like a little bit of time, right? Why? You know, like,
Did he
did
said
I
this
pop-
to you?
I'm like, no, I was thinking.
Oh,
this.
you're thinking, got you.
Yeah, and I was like, why? And he was like, and I was like, okay, like, Well, because I was in the Sioki lock and I was gonna, break my ankle, and he kept going on it, right? And it's like, okay, then I shouldn't have been tapping because my ankle's fine.
Yeah.
It didn't break.
Yeah.
So since it didn't break, then
You
like
had
if
more
someone
time.
if someone holds or if someone continues to attack a submission for 2 seconds after you have tapped and you leave that uninjured, you have tapped too early.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like type of thing, right? Like if someone holds like too long, like after a tap or attacks too long after a tap, that should cause injury.
Right.
That's why there's tap because we're stopping injury, right? So it just let me know that like, I'm not like really like seeing like my limit. Now, should I see my limit? Should I go get my ankle popped? Should I go? Which I did later.
Yeah.
Which later I was like, yeah, let's find out. I found out. But I'm now in the opinion of like, if I understand these leg locks better offensively, I'll be able to handle them more defensively, right? Because like I'll understand what their goals are, therefore I can understand how to better stop them from happening while they're in there. I'll understand if I attack these, I'll understand what I need more deeply. Like I know enough to like know what's going on, but to go in there, feel it, and understand deeply, so that way I can tack the points of like weakness in it. And then if I start applying these leg locks, I'll understand the braking force that's necessary to create the breaks, to create these injuries. So I'll be able to better understand it defensively on when I get to that limit. So needless to say, let's go something very simple, a straight arm lock, right? You put a straight arm lock on somebody, you know when it's going to break, right? Therefore, you learn, now I'm in one, when's it going to break?
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think if you want to be better at keeping your knees safe in leg locks, you've got to learn them offensively. And
That
when
makes
you
a
learn
ton of
them
sense.
offensively, you will be able to stay safer. Your knees will. Look at the best leg lockers. The best like anybody you think of, you're like, oh, this dude's a great leg locker, right? Like obviously Gordon. Okay. Now he's to the point where like very few people get to attack him.
Yeah.
Right? But Nicky Rod did and broke his foot,
Yep.
and Gordon kept it going.
Yeah.
Right? Gary, great leg locker, right? Ryan Hall, great leg locker, especially for MMA. I'm saying people that I feel like MMA people will know.
Right.
Oliver Taza, who recently did stout fights, was a great leg locker, And one of the things
Canyo.
yeah. But what you notice about these like great leg lockers is like they don't seem to have major knee injuries.
That's interesting. I was.
But
gonna
yet
guess the
leg locks
opposite.
a game. Leg locks a game where like, like I mean like if my legs are near you, then your legs are near me.
Right.
Right? There is a little bit of like
Danger.
danger
Yeah.
in the attack of them. Through the process of getting your entanglements, you are, risking some things through those processes. But I just feel like they have a deeper understanding of what's going on there, so they're able to stay relatively safe. Like I'm not worried about my arm, man, my arm getting popped in an arm lock, although it has several times, because like I am fully aware of that, because I'm fully aware of everything that is happening inside this arm lock.
Right.
Like I know the technique in detail intimately, so that way I feel like I can go to the bitter end.
Right.
And I'm like, all right, here comes
Tap in that last
Here
second.
comes the break tap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, all right, like but until then, I have a chance. I have a chance of it. Now I have no chance to tap.
Right.
Okay, so the better way to look at that is it gives you the chance for the longest amount of time.
Right.
Right? There comes a time where you have no chance and you tap, right? But in leg locks, you have no chance so much earlier when you don't know what's happening to your
Yeah.
leg.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't know. You're like, oh, is this it? Is that it? Right? So you're either hitting two ends of the spectrum. You're either tapping way early or you're getting hurt.
Right.
So just having a better knowledge of the leg lock, of the understanding of the technique, and like is the physiology, like, is that part of it? Is that the correct word? Like, like the anatomy of what is actually happening.
Yeah, so I haven't checked into this with like legit sources, but I've heard from higher level jiu-jitsu practitioners that like like Warren, for example, has told me this, that you have less proprioceptive like receptors in your knees than you do in like your elbows, for example.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. But I mean, I'm just saying, like, understanding how the body works
Oh, understanding
would
the
help
limits
you.
of-
Yeah,
dude, absolutely. Yeah,
like
for
you know
sure.
what I mean, and just stuff like that.
Yeah,
I think that's what
understanding-
can keep you safe in leg locks. Is like you got to know them yourself, and if you don't know them yourself, you're just not going to be safe in there, and it's going to feel like a panic position.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's just like I'm at a point right now where I don't know. Like I'm on that path. I'm on that path of catching up still.
Right.
You know,
Right.
like Vince Hill hooked me like last week, you know, and it's like he was like, "Oh, was that on?" And I'm like, "I think, like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think so, right?"
I
But like,
wasn't
you know
gonna
what I
find
mean?
out.
Yeah, yeah, you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, like, yeah, I got to be better offensively, which means I got to
Right.
take my time and like spend it there. And I'm still, even though I'm giving that advice, I'm still on that journey.
So learn the technique offensively and defensively, and like the position, everything
Dude, I
involved
say
with it.
offensively first.
That makes sense. And then two, I like what you were saying. Understand the anatomy of it. Like even if you just like took a look at the joint of the knee, like or any joint in the body, I feel like just helps people understand better. I mean, I know that my knowledge of anatomy has really helped my jujitsu a lot, so that makes a lot of sense too. If you have any last things to talk about, let's pop up on about leg locks. But I think we spent a lot of time on legs and knees. Although I do have a pretty wild leg lock injury, but that's a story for another time, I think.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I do. I would talk about my meniscus.
Oh
You
yeah,
know.
yeah. Let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah, so it did require surgery and it required a cleanup, but my meniscus tore, and I had a bucket and so I had a bucket handle, which is where your leg gets locked in place. Because if you think of the handle of a bucket coming up and getting caught on the
Right.
top part of your knee, like you know, like the thing that you would carry a bucket to the beach,
Right.
right? Boom, it gets caught, and then you gotta pop it off, so your knee can then freely extend into or bend. But the thing about that is it didn't affect me as far as being able to train and compete. I was able to train through it. So I tore my meniscus, we believe, on June 15th. And I fought on July 14th. And then I got surgery in late August. You
And
know
the
what
day
I mean?
before surgery, do you remember what you did?
Well, yeah, we were sprinting.
Yeah, and you smoked all of us.
Smoked everyone. Yeah. So like, you know what I mean? Like it didn't stop me, but what it did stop me from doing was I wasn't able to bring my heel to my butt,
Right.
which I is something I do in a lot of my game, like keeping my hips low.
Right.
So it had me like I had to like have a kickstand of a right leg. So that's why I wanted to get it fixed, but it didn't, and it like you know affected my performance as far as like just limiting the mobility of my right knee.
Right.
But I mean, I won a professional fight
Yeah.
with it torn.
Yeah.
You know, and it had been torn for the entire camp.
And do you have any? I don't really think there is anything, but do you have any advice for anyone how to like avoid that, or was that just one of those things that happens?
It's one of those things like, you know, they're just gonna I don't know enough. They're gonna tear I feel like I know like 100 people who have torn meniscus. You know, surgeries improve all the time. For example, I've heard terrible things about your neck surgery.
Yeah, me too.
You know, it's like, oh, don't do it. It's like the worst thing ever.
Right.
Da, da, da. But advancement, even as much as 5 years ago, right? So much advancements have been made in the area of your surgery. So I don't want to like you
Peyton
know,
Manning had this exact surgery and then won a Super Bowl. So
Yeah.
like, yeah,
so I don't want to like stamp a flag on meniscus surgeries, but man, I just so many horror stories about people trying to get them repaired.
yeah,
Right? You get them repaired first, it puts you out for way longer, and then I haven't heard of one who's made it a year without it re-tearing yet.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So it seems like just get it cut out. The way my surgeon explained it to me is there's 3 zones. There's the red zone, pink zone, and white zone, and that's the amount of blood flow that
Right.
area gets. And if it's in an area that doesn't get much blood zone and you try to repair it, it ain't gonna
right. It
heal.
won't heal itself anyway.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but so like, you know, I tend to like I don't know if the advancements have been made there. My surgery was 2018, 2019. Yeah, so it's been 5-6 years.
man, that hurts my knees just thinking about that. Okay, so I think we've discussed like joint issues a whole bunch, some like bigger surgeries and stuff. I kind of want to take this in one of two directions. Well, I want to
Yeah.
hit both of these, but you let me know what you want to do first. I either want to talk about concussions or how you should train and or improve when you're hurt.
Oh, okay. Let's go. How you should train or improve when you're hurt.
All right, you got anything to start off with? I got a lot of thoughts.
Yeah, I want you to kind of like handle.
All
this.
right, so I think one is you have to change your like mindset. So as soon as I knew I was getting surgery, and like as soon as I knew I wasn't going to be able to like go all out for like probably a year, I just had to change everything in my mind, right? Which is again, it's a lot easier for me. I'm a coach. I don't plan on competing really like ever, so like it doesn't matter. But I do like to every once in a while, you know, bang around with the guys and spar a little bit. And I also really enjoy doing like super intense pad rounds. Like anyone who's seen me do like pad rounds with like, Lucas and Britt and like Brody. Like I'm getting taken down and holding on the ground and fighting my way up, and I'm wrestling with pads on, and like it's very intense. And anyways, just immediately accepting like, all right, it's gonna be a year until I can do that. Like that you have to accept that. Like you have to switch from I'm getting ready to compete to my competition is now like healing.
Yeah.
So that helps a lot. And then I think the other thing was figuring out what I can do. So one thing that helped me is I was like, all right, I got a year where like I can't roll. I probably can't do like super, super intense. Yeah, I can't spar. I can't do, the intensity that I want to, train other people at. But like, what can I do? I was like, man, I can lift a bunch of weights. I love lifting weights. And for the past, I don't know, 10 years, I've really just lifted weights like as a fighter. Like I'm always like, oh, if I just spend too much time lifting weights, I'm not training enough. I'm not doing this enough. And it's like, dude, right now I just got a year where I'm like, I can just lift weights and just focus on that. So like, I'm just going to try to enjoy that, and again, that's kind of that same mindset of like, my mindset is healing, and now my mindset is doing what I can do, and then eventually working back to the things that I want to do. And then I think the last part of this is when in that process, again, incrementally adding in the training you can do. So if your right elbow is hurt and you're an MMA fighter, don't not show up to practice. Show up to practice and do everything you can with your left side. And maybe you get to a point in the practice where you're going to do some sparring or something that you can't do. Go hop on the back and just work your jab for a little bit. I think that's really important. I did that a lot in boxing when I hurt my joints a lot. And then the last thing is, regardless of what injury you have, you can always do film work, whether that is or I should say mental training. So whether that's you just doing visualization of reps in your head, whether it's you showing up to practice and taking notes on the side, whether it's you watching an instructional, or even just watching fights, as a fan. If you are deep enough into it, you will start to absorb things. You know what I mean? And I think those are like the really important things to do when you're hurt. So number one is shift your mind. Know that you've got to heal. Like that's number one if you want to get back to the things you want. Number two is once you've started to heal, train within your limitations, but don't just not train. That's what I did in the weeks when this arm wasn't working. Like I could have been doing other stuff. I wasn't. But
sometimes though, I was going to say sometimes just take a break.
That's true too, because I had not taken a break. For the longest break I'd taken from 14 until this in like lifting was maybe 2-3 weeks max. You know what I mean? Like this is the longest I've gone, and like I think there is some value in giving your body a break. So maybe that is important.
Body and mind a break. Like to jump in on that real quick. Like so, here's the thing. Like if you're perfectly healthy and you're taking a break, right? Like you're kind of like there's like an opportunity cost. You're wasting.
Right.
You know what I mean? But like it's like, dude, like I just popped my knee, right? Like maybe, all right, hey, you can't train to your fullest ability anyhow. Maybe now's the time, like, to take that mental break as well.
That is a really good point. That is something that I don't really do for myself as much as I should.
Right. Yeah. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, I need to get gas and I need to get groceries. Like, you're gonna take 2 trips, or you're gonna get them all, get it all done on one trip.
Yeah.
Like if you want to like use your time most effectively, maybe like, be like, all right, hey, like I hurt my knee. I'm gonna go on vacation. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
dude, and you know what? Taking like a vacation from combat sports, I think has a lot of value. Piggybacking off what you're saying, like think about how many times a fighter has been retired and then come back and like put on a great performance. We just saw Jose Aldo do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like having a long break from combat sports and that pressure. Like, I mean, this at a way higher level than I do. Like when you're a competitor, there's so much pressure, especially when you have a fight signed or you're looking for a fight. Like you're just so dialed in. Your entire life is just dedicated towards this one thing. And when that is seemingly out of your mind, especially if you're still training a little bit too, like it's just so freeing.
Yeah.
And like, having that mental break I think is really important. So that is good. And then my last point, film work, whatever that means to you. And there's no wrong way of doing it. There's right ways of doing it, but like if you're watching combat sports, you're getting something.
Yeah, as long as you're watching like good quality.
That actually is important. And one of the things, like amateur fighters, don't ask either of us to break down film because we won't do it. Watching amateur fights, it just makes you worse.
It makes you worse. Yeah.
Do you have anything to add to that? Like,
nope.
Yeah, I think that's like I gave very broad advice. It kind of covers everything.
Good advice. All right. Do you want to touch concussions?
Let's talk about concussions because this is uniquely important in combat sports. So,
and I think I have a real good understanding of it. So I did a case study, right? And basically, concussions aren't real. You just need to be tougher and go back to training.
Kind of, but also no.
No.
Do you want to start? You want me to start on this?
You start.
Okay, so I think with concussions, first we'll just kind of talk broadly, like how do we prevent them and how should you be thinking about these? Number one, remember, like, my neck is going to heal up. I'll be able to like roll full force again if I so choose. Your, bruised shins will heal up. Your brain might not heal and it's more plastic than some people think, but it might not ever heal perfectly. So like we've all seen people who are like older in combat sports who you can tell their brain's not working right. Like you want to avoid that at all costs. So one, like take it seriously. Two, I think something that's important is, you have to take certain, head trauma to get good at this sport. Like you have to spar, you have to, put yourself in situations where you might get cracked, but you have to periodize that the same way that you might periodize like strength training. You know what I mean? So, I come from boxing. Well, before that, traditional martial arts, but I spent a long time boxing. And in boxing, we sparred super hard all the time. And if you are the best of the best in that environment, like you probably won't get hit that much. You'll beat a bunch of dudes up and you'll get great timing and all that kind of stuff. But if you want the whole unit to progress, you can't just spar hard all the time. Now, I'm not anti-hard sparring. I think that before your first fight, you got to spar hard at some point, right? Like, how else are you going to get that feel? With that said, once you kind of like know the kid's tough and isn't going to like crumble under pressure, I'm like, why would we pressure test you in the gym? Why would we lose brain cells for that purpose? You know what I mean? So then I think it's way less important to get hard sparring in. And even within the week, like our guys probably spar 3, maybe even 4 times a week, but at least one of those times play sparring. Like you could have no gloves, no mouthpiece. Yeah. It wouldn't make a difference. Like what you see Ty's doing on, Instagram all the time, just playing. And they probably have 1 or 2 like kind of like light to medium sessions where, like we're hitting each other. We have gloves, we have a mouthpiece, but it's very low likelihood that you're going to get like your brain's going to get cracked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like maybe if you dive into a kick or you're running into a punch that someone didn't pull quite in time, maybe, but like it's very unlikely. And then we have one kind of like medium to hardish type of session. Where, as long as you're looking out for your partner, like there shouldn't be too many issues, but things happen, you know what I mean? So I think that's like the number one thing is like periodize your sparring, and occasionally take breaks from it. Occasionally be like, hey, I'm going to go 2-3 weeks. I'm just not going to get hit in the head at all. Yeah. I think that's really important. So that's my big thing on like the preventative side. Once you get a concussion, then, this is still a realm that's being, researched. But the advice that I give to our fighters is, take a good amount of time, no head contact, right? And the advice I'd heard years ago, and I have no idea how true this is, but I have kind of used this with success with our guys, is however many days you have symptoms, that's how many weeks no head contact. Minimum.
Oh, wow.
And I think there's like, that works within like a certain range. Like if you go like 20 days with no head and you're like hurting bad, I don't think you can just say 20 weeks and you'll be fine. Like you might need a little more time or something, but 1 to 5 days or something. I think that's like a decent protocol. Not a doctor. Don't, this is just general, not even advice. This is general information.
Yeah.
So rest. And when I say rest, I mean as much sleep as you can get. Like actively try to carve out the time to get 9-10 hours of sleep. Lots and lots of water and omega-3s, specifically DHA. And I think that covers a lot of the bases.
Yeah. I think you also got to kind of like feel out like what type of concussion you have.
This is kind of what I wanted really you to talk about with that case study.
Yeah. So I got a concussion years back. I'm still fighting. So 2017, 2018, something like that. Caught a knee to the head on a wrestling. We were wrestling. Logan and I were wrestling. Accidental knee to the head. Got a split and like was bleeding everywhere. So I went and got stitches and stuff and didn't think I had a concussion because I felt fine.
Right.
Days later, I started feeling concussion-like symptoms. Every time I would stand up, I would feel like I was on a boat. Like, that like back and forth, like whoosh and stuff. And then like anytime I go from sitting to standing, I'd just be like, whoa, Mm-hmm. So I did the whole like dark room rest, did not get any better. So then I called down to the UPMC, scheduled an appointment with concussion people, went down, did some tests or whatever. And the main person, a guy named Mickey actually, he like I was just dealing with I don't know who I was dealing with, but I was dealing with somebody who was not the head person.
Right.
And then all of a sudden the head person comes in, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no, is this like really bad? But he seems super excited.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
That could be bad too, but
It could be bad too, but he was like super excited. He was like, okay, here goes the thing. I think this is what's wrong with you. I think this is how we fix it. Da, da, da. And I'm like, oh, cool, man. Sounds like a great plan. And he was like, we want to do a case study on you, and we're going to present it at conferences and stuff like that. So we want to film all of it and like, you know what I mean? And like record all this stuff. And like, they needed my permission, obviously, to do that. And like, me to be okay with it. So that way I'd perform, I'd do all the things that they asked for in the case study. And things like that. So like, yeah, I agreed because in my head I was like, oh, dude, like I'm gonna get like
the best attention.
I'm getting premium attention.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, so I did it, and the discussion was I had a vestibular concussion. Like that was like the segment that they put me in, and that rest was the wrong thing to do to heal it. You know what I mean? Now, taking head trauma also wasn't the right thing.
Right, yeah.
But it was about getting me back to understanding where my body was in space. So they ended up putting me through a crap ton of hard workouts.
You're like, I didn't sign up for this.
They filmed it all, and they're going to present it. And they're presenting me as professional MMA fighter Mike Wilkins.
So you got this extra
so
pressure.
not only is it me doing it, so like like I'm going to be on the camera. Everybody's going to see my face at these conferences, my name.
Yeah.
But I'm also feel like now like I'm representing the mixed martial arts community.
Yeah.
Right? So we're doing these workouts and I'm hitting these shuttle runs. I'm doing these like basically like agility drills. I'm like catching medicine balls and throwing them. Like they'll like hit a signal. I'll have to like do a 180-degree jump, catch a ball, throw a ball, 180-degree jump back, like shuttle run, like I'm doing all these like things of like body and space. And like times where I just want to like slow down and just like dude, like I'm being pushed to my limit. I'm like, dude, what are you guys doing? Like this is way harder than all of my practices. But like I just like couldn't bring myself like the pressure of like upholding the MMA community.
Right.
Like I was just like, dude, it was miserable. But I mean, I was fine.
Yeah.
It fixed my concussion, I think.
Now, was it something where like they had to? So, for anyone who doesn't know, like Mike was saying, he had a vestibular, concussion. Is that what they called it? A vestibular concussion?
Yeah.
The vestibular system is like, it's like the little tubes and stuff that are in your like inner ear that allow you to know where you are in space. And sometimes they have like, for people who have like vertigo, they have like these series of like movements you can go through to like reset those little crystals in the tubes. Is that kind of what they were trying to do with you, or was it just like?
Dude, I don't know. I have no idea. I just know that I was doing these crazy like intense workouts on camera, and it was like at the Steelers training facility too. So it was like all this like high like quality stuff, and I'm like in this like cool building, and like I'm like this is sick. Like I'm on the Steelers. I'm doing it. I'm being filmed doing this stuff like on the Steelers practice field and stuff. So like you get that little like bump and stuff, and I was just like, dude, I was just like so like obsessed with like doing well.
Do you know if that case study got like published, if it went through peer reviewing or anything like that? Or
I have no idea.
Nope.
Then it was done.
Yeah, and you were like,
it ceased to exist, and I left.
That's good.
But
to know.
like it was like like up to that point, I was just like concussions, like rest, like dark room, rest, like heal.
Right.
And like that's what I was doing, and their theory was for this type of concussion that I had, I was making it not heal because of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because of the rest. That's interesting. Yeah.
So I think the bottom line of that is like, there's a lot of advice to be given from your coaches, your teammates, your training partners, your mentors and stuff. But like, maybe go see a professional.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I really want to get across. And, and I get it comes from a good place, but a lot of times our athletes, our students, our athletes will come up to us and be like, oh, like my shoulder this, my neck that, my knee this, my ankle this, my head, blah, blah, blah. And I get it because like we're like the mentor and we've been through it. So maybe we have experience with this. Maybe it's something
we're the position
we're
of authority
with.
In that place.
Yeah, position of authority. And like, we have the experience. Or like, like my elbow hurts. I bet you Mike's elbow has hurt.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I got a concussion. I'll be willing to bet those guys have got concussions.
Like, so what should I do and stuff? But at the end of the day, like I'm an MMA coach. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, go to a doctor. Like,
Yeah,
you know what I
dude.
mean? Like, I'll give you like the best advice I can, but um, don't rely on my advice in a field of profession that I do not have.
That dude, that's so huge. And people will come to me and they'll be like, "Oh, well, like you kind of like studied this stuff in like school and stuff." And I'm like, "Yeah, dude, I have a bachelor's in kinesiology. I
Yeah.
don't I don't have MD after my name. So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
don't don't think that what I tell you is like, you
Is
know,
the answer.
right, yeah. And
Right.
again, I can give you general advice. I can be like, "Oh, hey, I've seen that. You know, if this was me, I probably wouldn't worry about that. Give that a few days. But if it gets worse, definitely see a doctor, you know." Or I can tell you like, "Nah, go see a doctor like right now." You know what I mean?
Right.
But even that's just like based on our experience, what we're seeing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. So that's all I have to say about that.
yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't really have. I mean, I've had at least one really bad concussion, probably a couple of less bad concussions, but not a lot to add to that. Did we? Are there any injuries we missed, or any little things that? Oh, dude, I got something actually. You were just harping on the team about this. MMA fighters train and fight in a quality mouth guard. That
Oh
is,
my God, the mouth guard.
yeah, that's one of the only protective things you have.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean like you're fighting too, like in your competition, right? Like it's you know like the guys like you're wearing a cup, but other than that like your mouth guard, it's literally your only protection, right? And even beyond protecting you, which like it is going like a quality mouth guard is going to offer more protection than a shitty one.
Yeah.
Not just dental, like for your brain.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like absorbing the impact. But on top of that, if you have a poor fitting mouth guard, you see them fall out, and
Yep.
that looks bad. Like you know what I
And
mean? It does not look good. Like it's like, oh, he knocked his mouthpiece out. Like you know
Right.
what I mean? It looks like you're getting beat up.
And dude, so I can't really breathe through my nose very well. It's gotten a little better over the years, but like back when I was boxing, it was really bad. Like couldn't breathe through my nose like almost at all. And until I got a quality mouth guard that like was thicker in the back,
Yeah.
and a little more like there's a little space right there, I couldn't breathe with mouth guards. So I'd get tired really fast. I'm not getting the right protection. I never had my mouthpiece knocked out, but it could have,
Yeah.
and like yeah.
I mean, like, yeah, these boiler, like, I can't tell you how many times, like, so we're in the cage after a fight, and the fighter spits their mouthpiece out, and we're gonna throw it in the bucket, and I look at it, and I'm like, yo, this is not a mouthpiece. This is like a
Yeah.
boil and bite from like Dunham's
Yeah.
for $3.99. This ain't doing nothing for you. You know what I mean? Like a good quality mouth guard, you can get a good quality like form-fitted one where they send you a kit with the putty and all that stuff for like $100,
Yeah.
and like, dude, it's
worth its weight in gold.
worth
dude.
it.
Yeah.
It's worth it. So yeah, mouth guards.
I think that's super important. When you're training, look out for groups around you. If you're in joint locks, it's better to tap too early than too late. And I think, especially learning from this, especially for you young guys, you're in your early 20s, you don't have to always win in the gym. And like, you do need some sort of ego to be a good fighter, but you really have to temper that in the gym and make sure that you're not taking undue risks and not tapping when you should be, especially with your neck. Don't fool around with your neck. So
Yep, take it from him.
yeah. You got anything else to add? I think that
No,
kind
that's it.
wraps everything up on my end.
Nope. You know what I think that is? I think that's this week episode of Listen to Your Coaches, and we'll see you next time.